Hey guys, welcome to Neighbor Stories with JusRead. Today we're diving into some incredible stories about overcoming the toughest neighbor disputes. Our story is titled, I Bought 100 Homeowners Association Houses and Gave Them Away. The story starts like this. I never thought I'd become a real estate mogul, let alone a neighborhood savior. But life has a funny way of throwing curveballs, and mine came in the form of a winning lottery ticket and a decades-old grudge against homeowners associations. My name's Mike, and up until a year ago, I was just your average Joe working a 9-to-5 job at a local factory. I lived in a small apartment on the outskirts of town, scraping by paycheck to paycheck. The highlight of my week was usually grabbing a beer with my buddy Tom at the corner bar on Friday nights. It was during one of these Friday night hangouts that my life took an unexpected turn. Tom and I were nursing our beers, half watching the game on the TV above the bar, when he nudged me. Hey Mike, you hear about that new development they're building over on Maple Street? Tom asked, his eyes still fixed on the screen. I shook my head. No, what about it? Tom turned to face me, his expression a mix of disgust and amusement. It's gonna be one of those fancy gated communities. You know, with an homeowners association and all that crap? I couldn't help but groan. Another one? This town's getting overrun with those things. Tell me about it, Tom agreed, taking a swig of his beer. My cousin moved into one last year. Says it's like living under a microscope. Can't even paint your own damn door without filling out a form in triplicate. As Tom rattled on about his cousin's homeowners association horror stories, my mind drifted back to my childhood. I remembered the summer I turned 12, when my parents finally saved up enough to buy their first home. It was a modest little house with a small yard, but to us, it was a palace. Mom spent weeks planning out her garden, while Dad dreamed of building a treehouse for me in the backyard. But those dreams were short-lived. Within a month of moving in, we started getting notices from the Neighborhood Homeowners Association. The grass was too long. The color of our curtains wasn't approved. Dad's old pickup truck couldn't be parked in the driveway because it was an eyesore. It was a constant battle, one that wore my parents down over the years. They eventually sold the house and moved us into an apartment, their dream of home ownership tainted by the experience. I was jolted back to the present by Tom's voice. Earth to Mike. You still with me, buddy? Yeah, sorry, I mumbled, finishing off my beer. Just thinking about how much I hate those damn homeowners associations. Tom nodded sympathetically. Join the club. Hey, want another round? This one's on me. As Tom flagged down the bartender, I reached into my pocket for my wallet. My fingers brushed against something, a lottery ticket I'd bought on a whim earlier that week. I'd completely forgotten about it. Hold up, Tom, I said, pulling out the ticket. Let me check this real quick. Probably another bust, but you never know, right? Tom chuckled. Sure, dream big, buddy. Maybe you'll win enough to buy us both another beer. I pulled out my phone and checked the numbers. Then I checked them again. And again? Holy shit, I whispered, my hands starting to shake. Tom's grin faded. What? What is it? What is it? I looked up at him, my mind reeling. I think I just won the jackpot. The next few weeks were a blur of lawyers, financial advisors, and more zeros than I'd ever seen in my bank account. After taxes, I was left with a cool $215 million. It was more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes. As the dust settled and reality began to sink in, I found myself thinking more and more about that new development Tom had mentioned. An idea started to form in my mind, a crazy, possibly stupid idea, but one that wouldn't let go. I decided to pay a visit to the construction site. It was a Saturday morning, and the place was bustling with activity. Bulldozers rumbled across the landscape, and the frames of half-built houses dotted the area. I approached a man who seemed to be overseeing the work. His crisp shirt and clipboard marked him as someone in charge. Excuse me, I called out over the noise of construction. Are you the manager here? The man turned, eyeing me suspiciously. I'm the site supervisor. Can I help you? I extended my hand. I'm Mike. I was wondering if I could speak to someone about purchasing property here. His demeanor immediately changed, a salesman's smile spreading across his face. Of course, I'd be happy to assist you. Were you looking at a particular model? I took a deep breath. Here goes nothing, I thought. Actually, I was interested in buying the entire development. The supervisor's smile faltered. I'm sorry, what? The whole thing, I repeated, my confidence growing. All the houses, the land, everything. Is that possible? He stared at me for a long moment, then burst out laughing. Good one, buddy. Look, if you're actually interested in buying, I can set you up with our sales team. But the whole development? That's not how this works. I pulled out my phone, pulled up my bank app, and showed him the balance. His laughter died in his throat. I'm serious, I said quietly. Who do I need to talk to make this happen? The next few months were a whirlwind of negotiations, legal battles, and more paperwork than I'd seen in my entire life. The development company initially refused to sell, but everyone has a price. In the end, it cost me nearly $180 million, but I became the proud owner of 100 newly built houses and the surrounding land. The real estate world was buzzing with speculation. Who was this mystery buyer? What were his plans? I kept a low profile, working through lawyers and intermediaries, but I knew I couldn't stay in the shadows forever. It was time to put my plan into action. I started by reaching out to local charities and community organizations. I wanted to find families who were struggling, who needed a break, people like my parents had been all those years ago. Single parents working multiple jobs to make ends meet, veterans struggling to adjust to civilian life, teachers and nurses and firefighters who gave so much to their communities but could barely afford rent. One of the first families I met was the Johnsons. Sarah was a widow with 2 young kids, working as a nurse at the local hospital. When I sat down with her in the small apartment she shared with her children, her exhaustion was palpable. "Ms. Johnson," I began, feeling suddenly nervous, "I have a proposition for you." Sarah looked at me warily. "What kind of proposition?" I took a deep breath. "I'd like to give you a house." She blinked, then laughed nervously. "I'm sorry, what? A house?" I repeated. "Free and clear. No mortgage, no strings attached." Sarah's laughter faded, replaced by a mix of confusion and suspicion. "Is this some kind of joke?" I shook my head. "No joke. I recently came into some money, and I decided to do something good with it. I bought a whole neighborhood, and now I'm giving the houses away to people who deserve them." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "But, why? Why me?" I thought about my parents, about their struggles and sacrifices. "Because you work hard, because you're doing your best for your kids, because everyone deserves a chance at the American dream." Over the next few weeks, I had similar conversations with dozens of families. Some reacted with joy, others with disbelief. A few even refused at first, sure that there had to be a catch. But slowly, house by house, the neighborhood began to fill with new homeowners. Of course, it wasn't all smooth sailing. Word got out about what I was doing, and suddenly everyone wanted a piece of the pie. My phone was ringing off the hook with people claiming to be long-lost relatives or old friends, all hoping for a free house. Then there were the neighbors in the surrounding areas. Some were thrilled at the idea of a diverse, vibrant new community. Others, not so much. I'll never forget the day I got a call from an irate woman named Karen. She lived in the upscale neighborhood next to my development, and she was not happy. "Do you have any idea what you're doing to our property values?" she screeched into the phone. "We didn't pay a fortune to live here just to have a bunch of charity cases move in next door." I took a deep breath, reminding myself to stay calm. "Ma'am, these are hard-working people who contribute to our community. They're nurses, teachers, veterans." "I don't care if they're saints," Karen interrupted. "This is going to ruin everything. We'll be overrun with crime and noise and who knows what else. I'm calling my lawyer." True to her word, Karen and a group of her neighbors filed a lawsuit, claiming that my actions were in violation of some obscure zoning law. It was a nuisance suit, designed more to delay and intimidate than to actually win, but it still meant more time and money spent on lawyers. But for every Karen, there were dozens of people who supported what I was doing. Local businesses started reaching out, offering to donate furniture or appliances to the new homeowners. A group of contractors volunteered their time to help with any necessary repairs or modifications. As the houses filled up and the community began to take shape, I realized I had one more important task: dismantling the homeowners association that had been set up by the original developers. I called a meeting of all the new homeowners. We gathered in what was supposed to have been the Homeowners Association's clubhouse, a pretentious building, with faux Greek columns that I was already planning to turn into a community center. "First of all," I began, looking out at the sea of faces, "I want to thank you all for taking a chance on this crazy idea of mine. You've already started to turn these houses into homes, and this development into a real community." There was a smattering of applause and a few cheers. I smiled, then continued. "Now, as you know, this place was originally designed to have a homeowners association. Well, I'm here to tell you that as of today, that homeowners association is officially dissolved." A murmur ran through the crowd. Some people looked relieved, while others seemed concerned. But one woman spoke up. "Who's going to enforce the rules? Keep people from letting their yards go to seed or painting their houses crazy colors?" I nodded, having expected this question. "That's a great point, and it brings me to the real reason I called this meeting. I don't believe we need a bunch of restrictive rules to have a nice neighborhood. What we need is communication, cooperation, and a sense of community." I outlined my plan. Instead of an homeowners association, we would form a neighborhood council. It would be voluntary, with rotating membership. Its job wouldn't be to enforce rules, but to facilitate community projects, resolve disputes through mediation, and organize events. The goal, I explained, is to create a community where we look out for each other. Where if someone's grass is overgrown, we don't write them a citation. We ask if they need help mowing. Where if someone wants to paint their house purple, we don't ban it. We have a block party and all pitch in to help. There was a moment of silence as everyone digested this. Then, slowly, people began to nod. Smiles spread across faces. One by one, hands went up as people volunteered for the council or suggested ideas for community projects. As the meeting went on, I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders. This was what I had hoped for, not just giving people houses, but helping to build a real community. Over the next few months, that community flourished. We had our challenges, of course. There were disagreements and misunderstandings. The lawsuit from Karen and her cronies dragged on, though our lawyers assured us it was going nowhere. But for every problem, there seemed to be a dozen victories. I watched as neighbors helped each other with home repairs, as impromptu potlucks sprang up on warm evenings, as kids from different backgrounds became fast friends. The community center became the heart of the neighborhood. We set up a daycare co-op there, and in the evenings, it hosted everything from ESL classes to yoga sessions. The building that was supposed to have been a pretentious symbol of exclusivity had become a place of learning, sharing, and connection. 1 year after I'd bought the development, we threw a massive block party to celebrate. As I looked around at the laughing, chatting crowd, I spotted Sarah Johnson. She was talking animatedly with a group of her neighbors, her kids playing nearby with their friends. I made my way over to her. "Having a good time?" I asked. Sarah turned to me, her face glowing. "Mike, I was just telling everyone how different my life is now compared to a year ago. Do you know, last week I actually had time to join a book club." "Me?" I chuckled. "Well, I hope the book was good." "It was terrible," Sarah laughed. "But that's not the point. The point is, I have time now. Time to be with my kids, time to take care of myself, time to be part of a community. You didn't just give me a house, Mike. You gave me a life." I felt a lump form in my throat. "I'm glad," I managed to say. "That's all I wanted." Just then, there was a commotion at the edge of the party. I turned to see Karen storming towards me, a piece of paper clutched in her hand. For a moment, I tensed, ready for another confrontation. But as Karen got closer, I realized she wasn't angry. She looked defeated. "It's over," she said, thrusting the paper at me. "The judge threw out our lawsuit, said we had no standing." I took the paper, glancing at the legal jargon. "I'm sorry you're disappointed," I said carefully. Karen deflated, all the fight going out of her. "I'm not," she said quietly. I'm ashamed." I blinked in surprise. This was not the reaction I'd expected. Karen looked around at the party, at the happy faces and the sense of community that was almost palpable in the air. "I was so wrong," she said. "I was scared of change, scared of people who were different from me. But looking at all this is what a neighborhood should be." I didn't quite know what to say. "Would you like to join us?" I finally offered. "There's plenty of food, and I think the kids are about to start a game of tag." Karen hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "I'd like that," she said. "And I'd like to apologize to everyone. Maybe I could volunteer at the community center or something?" As I watched Karen tentatively join a group of neighbors, who welcomed her without hesitation, I felt a sense of completion. This was why I'd done all this. Not just to give people homes, but to break down barriers, to show that we're all just people, trying to build better lives for ourselves and our families. The lottery win had given me the means to do something big, something that could change lives. But the real wealth, I realized, was in the community we'd built together. A community without gates or rigid rules, but with open hearts and helping hands. As the sun began to set on our celebration, I looked out over the neighborhood, my neighborhood. The houses, once cookie-cutter models designed to showcase conformity, had taken on the personalities of their owners. Gardens bloomed in previously manicured lawns. The sound of laughter and music filled the air. I thought about my parents, about their shattered dream of homeownership. I wish they could see this, a neighborhood where people were free to express themselves, to help each other, to truly live rather than just exist under a set of arbitrary rules. In the end, I hadn't just bought 100 houses. I'd helped create 100 homes, and one incredible community. And that, I realized, was worth more than any lottery jackpot. Update. It's been 5 years since I bought those 100 houses and gave them away. A lot has changed, but the heart of our community remains the same. We've had our ups and downs, sure, but overall, things have turned out better than I ever could have imagined. Remember Sarah Johnson, the nurse who was one of the first to receive a house? Well, she's now the head of our neighborhood council. Last week, I sat down with her for coffee to catch up. "You know, Mike," she said, stirring her latte, "sometimes I still can't believe how much has changed. My kids are thriving in school, I've been promoted at work, and I actually have time to volunteer at the community center." I grinned. "That's great to hear, Sarah. How's the council doing?" She laughed. "Busy as always, but good busy, you know. We're actually working on a new project. Remember that empty lot at the edge of the neighborhood?" I nodded. It was a piece of land I'd bought along with the houses, but we'd never quite figured out what to do with it. "Well," Sarah continued, "we're turning it into a community garden. We've got plans for vegetable plots, a small orchard, even a butterfly garden. The whole neighborhood's pitching in." As we chatted, I couldn't help but reflect on how far we'd come. The lawsuit from Karen and her neighbors had been just the beginning of our legal battles. Once word got out about what I'd done, it seemed like everyone wanted a piece of the action. We had real estate developers trying to muscle in, claiming I'd violated some obscure zoning laws. Local politicians tried to score points by alternatively praising or condemning my actions. There were even a few con artists who tried to scam their way into getting houses. But through it all, our community stood strong. We hired a team of lawyers who were passionate about our cause, and they fought tooth and nail to protect what we'd built. One case in particular stands out in my memory. A slick real estate tycoon named Richard Goldstein had somehow gotten wind of our situation. He showed up one day in a fancy suit and an even fancier car, asking to meet with me. "Mr. Thompson," he said, flashing a smile that didn't reach his eyes, "I've got a proposition for you. I'm willing to take this project off your hands. I'll pay you double what you spent. Think about it. You could walk away with a tidy profit and none of the headaches." I'll admit, for a split second I was tempted. The stress of all the legal battles and community management had been getting to me. But then I thought about Sarah, about all the families we'd helped, about the community we'd built. "Thanks, but no thanks, Mr. Goldstein," I said firmly. "This neighborhood isn't for sale." His smile vanished. "Don't be a fool," he snapped. "You're in over your head. These people, they'll bleed you dry. Take the money and run." I stood up, signaling that our meeting was over. "I think you should leave now, Mr. Goldstein. And don't come back." He left, but that wasn't the end of it. A week later, we were slapped with another lawsuit, this time claiming that our community model violated fair housing laws. It was a bogus claim, of course, but it meant more time in court, more money spent on lawyers. But here's the thing, every time we faced a new challenge, our community grew stronger. People volunteered to help with legal research. Local law students offered their time to assist our lawyers. When news of the latest lawsuit spread, neighboring communities started holding fundraisers to help with our legal fees. It was during this time that Karen, our former nemesis turned ally, really stepped up. She used her connections in the upper-class neighborhoods to rally support for us. She organized town halls, wrote letters to editors, and even appeared on local news to defend our community. "I was wrong about them," she said in one memorable TV interview. "This isn't bringing down our property values or increasing crime. If anything, it's made our whole area stronger. These are good people who just needed a chance, and look what they've done with it." In the end, we won. The judge not only dismissed Goldstein's lawsuit but also imposed sanctions on him for filing a frivolous claim. It was a victory not just for us, but for communities like ours all over the country. As Sarah and I finished our coffee, a group of kids ran past, laughing and shouting. I recognized a few of them, children who, just a few years ago, had been living in cramped apartments or homeless shelters. Now they were just regular kids, playing without a care in the world. "Oh, before I forget," Sarah said, pulling out her phone, "we're having a neighborhood potluck this weekend. Can you make it?" I smiled. Wouldn't miss it for the world. The potluck that weekend was like a microcosm of everything we'd achieved. There was food from a dozen different cultures, music playing, kids running around. I saw former lawyers chatting with ex-cons who'd turned their lives around. A group of teenagers was helping an elderly couple carry their dishes to the table. As I stood there, taking it all in, I felt a tap on my shoulder. I turned to see Tom, my old drinking buddy, grinning at me. "Hey, big shot," he said, punching my arm lightly. "Quite a shindig you've got here." I laughed. "Tom? I didn't know you were coming." He shrugged. "Sarah invited me. Said something about wanting to thank me for giving you the idea in the first place." He looked around, shaking his head in wonder. "I gotta say, Mike, when you told me what you were planning to do with your lottery money, I thought you'd lost your mind. But this is something special." We grabbed some food and found a quiet spot to sit and catch up. As we talked, I found myself reflecting on the past 5 years. "You know, Tom," I said, "winning that lottery was just dumb luck. But this," I gestured around us, "this took work. It took all of us, working together, believing in something bigger than ourselves." Tom nodded thoughtfully. "You could have just bought yourself a mansion and a fancy car, lived the easy life. Why'd you do all this instead?" I thought about my parents, about their struggles with that homeowners association so many years ago. I thought about all the families I'd met who just needed a break, a chance to build a better life. "Because it was the right thing to do," I said simply. "And because I could." As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over our little community, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. There would always be challenges, always be people like Goldstein who valued profit over people. But we'd shown that there was another way. We'd created something that couldn't be bought or sold, a true community. The lottery had given me money, but what we'd built here, that was the real wealth. And unlike the money, it was something that would last, something that would grow and change and evolve long after I was gone. As I looked out over the laughing, chatting crowd, I knew that no matter what challenges came our way, we'd face them together. We'd started with 100 houses, but we'd ended up with so much more, a home for all of us. And guys, with this we have reached the end of the video. If you enjoyed this epic neighbor showdown, please smash that like button, comment with some house emojis to show your support, and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Thanks a lot, and I will see you again tomorrow with another amazing story.